You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
There was a second meeting on May the 30th when the chief met with Sergeant Smith, the safety director, assistant safety director, and two other individuals, at which time we felt that there was some willingness on the part of all the parties to move beyond the issue.
For anyone who attended Cincinnati City Council meeting on Wednesday, it was abundantly clear that City Manager John Shirey miscalculated the result of that May 30th meeting.
It has everything to do with city administration and city officials failing to speak up when misinformation was disseminated in the media. As a result of that misinformation, the Sentinel Police Association, along with Sergeant Smith, has been made to be the villain in this situation. That's very unfortunate because Sergeant Smith and the Sentinel Police Association did not create this situation.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. Anybody who thinks that race is not still the great challenge of American society only needs to observe what is happening in this community right now. Last week, I structured the show to try to throw light on the issues raised by the incident on May the 10th between Police Chief Tom Stryker and Sergeant Andre Smith. The first part of the show, I was joined by two diversity trainers. For the last 9 minutes, I was joined by Chief Stryker. This morning, all of Newsmakers will again focus on the implications of this incident. Andre Smith joins me this morning. He is a sergeant with the Cincinnati Police Department and is currently stationed at District 2. Andre, welcome to Newsmakers.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. You clearly through the papers, but very clearly at City Council on Wednesday, and we're taping this show on Friday, airs on Sunday, but we're taping on Friday. A couple of days ago, you said you disagreed with the way Chief Stryker and the police force and the city administration have characterized the incident. Now, rather than think about that theoretically, I'd like to just show you a little clip of the way Chief Stryker described one part of this that I know you dispute. So let's take a look at what Stryker said on this show. You were role-playing.
Right, role-playing.
You were consciously, and everybody knew this was a role-playing situation. And what was the role you were playing?
I was playing the part of the bad guy or the police officer that chooses to engage in some type of inappropriate conduct. And in this case, it was confronting an African-American citizen and using a very, very harsh term. And the officer himself, I was portraying him as a citizen, African-American citizen, who was the victim or recipient of that inappropriate conduct.
That's his characterization. Was this role-playing from your perspective?
Absolutely not. There was, like I've said earlier and repeatedly, when the chief said what he said to me, I was shocked. It came out of the blue. You could have heard a pin drop.
Describe the situation as it existed.
The chief was discussing the CCRP process, which is the Citizens Complaint Resolution process, which is designed to handle minor complaints at a district level.
And I must say that that's what he said was going on that day in another part of the show. Okay,
right.
Go
It's
ahead.
an excellent process, which I wholeheartedly support. The chief was standing 10 to 15 feet away from me. In fact, the classroom was a horseshoe shape. He was standing right in the middle of the classroom. In fact, in front of two African-American sergeants. I was behind him at the end of the table.
So he was standing, those of you in the class were sitting at tables but in a horseshoe?
That is correct.
Okay.
And he was in the middle facing, and I was actually behind him. I was actually in the last seat in the room. Without warning, the chief just out of the blue was talking about the process, turned to me, walked to me, and pointed at me and said, if I called Andre Smith the N-word. In fact, he had to pass 3 African-American sergeants to get to me. As I said before, you could have heard a pin drop. I was absolutely shocked. I didn't know where that came from. We were not talking about race. And after he said the word, we never discussed race. At no point in that 8-hour segment did we discuss race. At no point in that 8-hour segment did we ever role play. It just, as I said before, it came out of the blue.
Well, let me do two things here. One, and because I think maybe I gave the wrong impression last week, even in the way I set up the first part of the show, in the sense I had two people come in and who do diversity training, two people I respect, and I think it was a very good section of the show, but I certainly gave the impression that that cultural diversity, race, was the topic in this session. You're saying it was not.
Absolutely not. The chief, it was an 8-hour training course. It was titled Management Training.
Okay.
There were several instructors that day. The chief was allotted the first time slot because, quite frankly, he's the chief, and he was there to give, and his structure was titled State of the Police Division.
Then, when you say it wasn't role-playing, he was talking about this complaint process.
Yes, sir.
He said that, you said that.
Yes, sir.
That was the immediate reason why he was there that day, to talk about this complaint process.
No, that's incorrect. He was there to talk about the State of the Police Division. And in that hour, he had a 50-minute time slot, which went into actually took about an hour and 50 minutes. During that time, we talked about a multitude of things. He started the class asking, well, he told us where he thought the division was and where he wanted it to go, and then he started soliciting input from us as managers as to what we thought were important. So it was really just an open classroom discussion. And the title was just the State of the Police Division.
And then you got to this specific topic of this new complaint process.
Well, that was one of the many topics that were discussed.
But
absolutely.
that came up.
Yes, sir.
So there wasn't a formal role-playing in the sense of diversity training or some other training where people, where a facilitator says, okay, we're going to do role-playing, and you play this role, and you play this role. There wasn't that at all.
Absolutely not.
Did you, though, think that this was, in effect, spontaneous? Did you recognize this as spontaneous role-playing?
No.
That he was taking on this bad cop persona?
Absolutely not. Once again, and it should be clear that the CCRP process is designed to handle minor complaints. If an officer was to call a citizen a racial slur, that would not be mediated through that process. That would go through internal investigations. That's a serious infraction, and it would be dealt with and handled seriously. It wouldn't even deal with the process that he was talking about. So we were talking about minor citizens, and he was actually making a comparison and showing that the CCRP process is a better process than the old process that we had, whereas a citizen would make a complaint and go to internal investigations, they would get a card, and that would be the end of it.
Right.
So my line of thinking at the time, we were just comparing two complaint processes, and when he said what he said, it totally stunned me. It should be noted, even the safety director has reported he talked to other members in the classroom, and they were just as stunned and shocked as I was.
Okay. Chief, I want to keep moving this along because I'm aware of time.
Yes, sir.
Chief Stryker said last week that the fact that you filed a formal complaint and went to the safety director's office, Kent Ryan's office, was the proper thing.
Yes, sir.
He agrees that that was a proper move. I also, at the time, though, raised with him what would have happened if you had just come to him and said directly, I'm offended by what you did, here's how I feel about it, et cetera, et cetera. And he responded to that, and he responded positively. But, you know, that's... Did you ever consider not filing the complaint and just going to Chief Stryker and saying, hey, what's going on here? That was really out of line, Chief.
Initially I did, but quite frankly I felt, and I said in my paper or my report, that I thought it was a personal attack, and I thought I responded appropriately based on my perception of the events that occurred. And I stand by that, and I think I did the right thing.
Okay. The chief also, many times, but on this show as well, said he apologized to you. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
There was an impression, and this was one of the issues at City Council on Wednesday, the impression was from the manager's report last week that you had accepted that apology. That was the impression that council members had. You spoke differently about that. The chief extended an apology. What was your reaction
The chief
to that?
extended, we met the first time, and in that meeting was Colonel Twitty.
Who
Chief
is
Stryker,
Colonel Twitty?
Lieutenant Colonel Ronald Twitty is the Patrol Bureau Commander. He's assistant chief. He asked me to meet with the chief. I agreed, along with Police Specialist Scotty Johnson, who's the Sentinel President. The chief at that meeting, it was a lengthy meeting, but he did offer an apology. Quite frankly, I did not accept that apology. There was a subsequent meeting.
Did you say that at the time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There was a subsequent meeting after that, and it was the city manager mentioned that as well. It should be noted that meeting was set up at my request.
Okay.
And in that meeting was the safety director, assistant safety director, Chief Stryker, Lieutenant Clarence Williams, and Scotty Johnson and myself. And that meeting was set up to, in essence, say, hey, this is an issue we have. At some point, there has to be some resolution. At some point, we need to deal with this, and that's what it was designed to do. And I felt that that had been accomplished, but unfortunately, that was not the case.
Okay. One of the things, and I want to roll another little tape here,
Yes,
because something that you said on Wednesday doesn't jive with what the chief said last week. I'd like to roll this tape when I ask him the question about the use of the N-word in future police training. Does this mean in the future that in police training situations, the N-word cannot be used for training?
The decision that's been made by the safety director and myself and the city manager is that it should not be used.
If I understood what you said on Wednesday, you said, in fact, there has been no order issued to that effect. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is this a conflict, or is it just a matter that paper order hasn't been issued, but in fact, this is, in fact, the new policy?
Well, actually, it's two issues. In council, what I was referring to with that was that there was discussion that the chief had said or alluded to after he said the word. There was discussion about the word, and he was using the word to say that he had a zero tolerance for such language. And what I was making clear in city council was that prior to the use of that word and after the use of that word and during the entire 8-hour session, there was no discussion on race, racial slurs, cultural diversity training, and also to date, there has been no written directive from the chief and or city administration addressing the use of not only that word, but any racial slur or any slur that would make someone feel uncomfortable.
Okay. I'm going to go a little bit long here. I'm just warning the people upstairs. Two things. Where do we go from here? Where do you want this to go from here?
Well, actually, I thought after the second meeting we were there. I thought that I had, as well as Scotty Johnson, had put some issues on the table.
Scotty Johnson being the head of the Sentinels, who wasn't able to join us for schedule reasons. I just want to make that clear.
Yes, sir.
It wasn't his problem. I mean, it wasn't his fault. He just couldn't work the show in this morning.
Sir.
Okay.
Well, and like one of the things I brought up was a policy on the use of how we conduct our training sessions. I'm a 13-year veteran. I know how to navigate through issues that occur every day within the police division, but I also envision myself as a first-day recruit or someone with no experience having to go through what I went through. I would like to see the city administration do the right thing and deal with the issue at hand. That's all I've always wanted to see.
Meaning what the city council did, and we're going to talk with Alicia Reece about this in the second part of the show, bring in federal mediation?
Well, it's at that point now, that's out of my hands to make that call.
That's more the means. You're just saying it needs to be dealt with.
Exactly.
You know, there's one other thing, one other area I want to touch on. And you have said in council, and you've said several times, that your history with the department has been maligned and that things were released. I just want to say that, you know, documents that we receive through Public Information Act request, there is a series of documents here which you have had conflicts with superiors at the police department. A 1993 incident, a 1997 incident, 1999 question. And I guess most seriously in my mind, the 1993 incident in which then Chief Snowden said that he found you not to be honest. And this comes down to an honesty question. It's you and Stryker and what the heck happened here. What do you say to that?
Well, I think, quite frankly, that first of all, it's unfair. That should not have been in my jacket. So by it being released, that's a violation of my rights.
Why isn't this is a public document? I mean, these are the sorts of things we, as the media, can get to.
We have jackets, and after 3 years, that should have been expunged. But even in lieu of that, I think if you ask me the question what occurred, then I should be given the form to fully explain, and two, I think there's a responsibility on your part or whoever's looking at that document to get the full question. If this is an issue of honesty, I should not have used something that happened in '93, which I don't have the time to fully give my side of the story. Is kind of unfair. The issue is simply this. I was there May 10th, the chief was there May 10th, and an incident occurred. I documented that incident, and to date, I am the only one who has documented it. the city manager, the chief, as well as the safety director have all said there's been no dispute or debate about what I put on paper. It's not an honesty issue. The chief did it. He said he did it. He did it. There again, that's what I mean about the maligning of my character. No one has questioned the chief. No one's asked him anything about his background. No one's asked him, has he ever called a citizen that word? I've been attacked in that fashion. The bottom line is, from the time I wrote that document, there's been no dispute, no debate about the accuracy of that document. The chief did it, and I think, and that's the problem I have, that I'm trying to defend something that happened in '93, and I will not, or I will never be given the proper form to do that. But as far as what happened in 2000, the chief did it.
Okay. Thank you for coming. Thank you for answering some tough questions.
Yes, sir.
And we'll see where we go from here, and hopefully it's in a positive direction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stay tuned. Where the city goes from here is the responsibility of city council.
We've got to go beyond the word. What we're talking about, what we've heard in these chambers today in a couple weeks, was that we now have a sense of division in our Cincinnati Police Department.
He has been criticized and vilified far beyond what his actions deserve. Mr. President, I think it's time that we drop this matter once and for all.
Welcome back. Some members of City Council spoke in support of Chief Stryker. Phil Heimlich and Jim Tarbell, satisfied with the way the administration has dealt with the issue, argue the incident is self-contained and it is now time to move on. Mayor Lucan, Charlie Winburn, Todd Portune expressed support for the chief, but felt that the incident was a window on a larger set of issues about race in the police department, and that the way to move forward was to deal with those issues. Other members of council were openly critical of the way the administration handled the incident and also want to take on the larger contextual issues. I am joined this morning by one of those members who falls into the latter category. Alicia Reece is a Democratic member of council. During this week's council meeting, she spoke out vigorously and poignantly about the next steps. Alicia, welcome back to Newsmakers.
Thanks for having me.
What do you think? This was the report that council members received a week and a half ago. We're taping on Friday morning, so 2 council meetings ago, not this past Wednesday, but the Wednesday before. And this was, the report from the manager was the subject of a lot of your remarks. How do you feel the administration handled the issue, aside from what the issue itself was?
Right. I'm very disappointed in the way that the administration has handled this issue. I know that some say it's an isolated issue, let's bury it and let's move on. But we're elected by the citizens of Cincinnati, and the problem is that my office and several council offices have been receiving calls, not just by African Americans, but by members of the Jewish community, by members of the women's community, asking, will we be next? That report states some of the facts, but it doesn't state any solutions. When they talk about counseling.
And when you say, before we get on to that, the punishment handed out was what was called documented counseling. This also was an issue for you on Wednesday.
That was a major issue because we have not addressed how we're going to make sure that this never happens again. Cincinnati, we're just now getting over the marred shot comment. Even though they were the same words used in maybe different contexts, all around the country, that's what was the stigma on Cincinnati. And we're finally getting beyond that, and we're moving to some wonderful, exciting things that are happening in our city. And then we have this occur, which I stated has taken us back almost 20 years, because now we have further polarization. We've had officers who have come to the chambers and testified that now we have a division within our police department. We want our officers to feel safe. How are they going to feel safe if they're going to be riding with each other, don't trust each other, or have something in their minds about this issue? The other thing is, how can citizens feel safe if we don't have a united police department? So I think we have several issues. One, the internal issues that we're going to have to deal with, and how is the chief going to now address that? How is he going to restore trust? How is he now going to make sure that that word is not used toward anyone, whether it's by him or whether it's by people that are under him? The other thing is, what are we using in our training? Some members of council say, hey, this is role playing. Well, our police department is going to interact with a variety of criminals. And I've had questions, are we using racial slurs toward any other groups? And I don't know that answer.
Let's back up. There's a lot of things you've just said there. I don't want to play the older bald guy or historian, but one of your lines on Wednesday was, and it's sort of buried in there this morning, that, gee, now we have this division in the police force. I mean, I hate, but my perception is, gee, because this is America and because of our history, institutionally, let's recognize that we've had that division for a long time. It's not like this is a new division. This is, it's cropping up this time this way.
Right.
But surely you don't believe that there wasn't any racism or racial, let me put it this way, there wasn't any racial tension in the police force, and then all of a sudden it cropped up in the year 2000.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is now you have the head of the police department, and you have this situation, which certainly I think heightens the tension when certainly we're looking to that individual to work on that relationship. So I think that poses somewhat of a problem, and I'm very interested to see how we're going to deal with that. I hadn't seen that in the report, what the chief plans to do to restore trust again.
Let's talk about the internal issue first, restoring trust.
Right.
What would you like to see? What do you expect to see the chief do? What would you, if you had a chance to sit down and talk with him, what would you tell him he could positively do to move forward on that internal issue?
Well, there are a couple things that I think is very important. One is the dialogue that has to take place, and it has to be very frank. I need to know what kind of slurs are we using in our role playing toward any group. And I think when we design our training, of course, I'm looking at having possibly an outside group, maybe the National Conference of Christian and Jews, maybe the NAACP, to come in and kind of look at our training, and for the chief to work with them to design a program that addresses that. Also women's groups to come in so that we kind of get an understanding of how we can design our training and how we can address some of those internal issues. The other component that I think, and it deals with the external component, which we certainly have a major issue on. We've all been talking about police-community relations, and I have yet to see a plan that has come out of our department on how we're going to deal with police-community relations. Certainly the polarization is widening, not just on this incident, but other incidents, and we have further polarization. And I'd like to see us become, hopefully, a council and a department that is not just reactionary, but proactive.
I am aware of time here. Two tough things. Do you believe Chief Stryker can recover from this? Is what you really want? Do you think that Chief Stryker has to resign?
I don't know. I'm not the one to answer that. I think we need to really seriously sit down with some external groups with the chief to have an opportunity for the chief to present to us from him what he plans to do to restore the trust and to work on these internal and external issues. I'm one who believes in giving that opportunity to the chief to present that to us in council, and then we have to take it from there.
Other question. You were very critical of the manager and the manager's office in handling this situation. Do you support the continued employment of John Shirey as the manager, or would you join, if it comes to the floor of council, a vote to fire John Shirey?
Well, when I first got elected, I had 10 points that I was looking at for the manager. One of them was police community relations. The other one was his communication with council members. I'm over the employment committee, so I'm one that believes in fairness. I believe that the city manager should have a fair opportunity to present his case and his program. We should have a fair opportunity to question him, and I will keep an open mind until that occurs in all fairness.
Okay, I've got less than 20 seconds. Do you expect that kind of motion to come on the floor of council in the next 2 weeks?
I haven't heard anything about that motion coming on the floor, but I'm more concerned with hearing from the chief and seeing how we can move forward on this issue.
Thank you for coming this morning. I really appreciate it for being here, and you'll be back. Okay. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next Sunday to meet the women and the men who shape our region as we move into the future. Have a good week.